The word alone was enough. A handshake meant a lot back then. I mean, if the word and the agreement of a word wasn't enough, then the handshake was the only thing left to seal the deal. When trust has eroded away from the things out there that are ultimately the decision makers and the things that are impacting the average man and woman, these things, the average family, when these things begin to happen, I think that what we are experiencing is the decline of the world power that still is, but could very soon become the was of the American empire. And that's a shame. Because when trustworthiness and truth breaks down, the world around it begins to crumble into chaos. When a society removes God from the equation and decides that truth is negotiable, trustworthiness dies. And when trust dies, society becomes entirely defenseless. And so when we walk in truth, we reflect His character. His very character is reflected in that truth, if that's in fact what we are walking in. Trust is anchored to truth, and truth is the center pillar. And without truth, there is no trust. And without trust, what do you actually have? Hey, welcome back to Proving Proverbs. I am Brad Casper, and this is where we read the text, absorb the knowledge, display the wisdom, and reap the blessings, because that's what we're promised from the Most High, that if we follow these instructions and we keep these precepts, that we will experience blessings in this life. And I'm not too sure about you, but I am all about those blessings. And that's what Proving Proverbs is all about. It's about putting that concept to the test. And this week we are diving back into chapter 25. And, before recording here, I got to thinking about this, and this has been so far a 25-week journey through the book of Proverbs, one chapter a week. And after thinking about that, I can see where this book of Proverbs is almost like an architectural blueprint to a life of virtue. And I think that that's something that we should all desire to obtain in this life, a life of virtue. But I think as we get older, these type of things take on a different meaning. And I think that that's, at least for me, when you truly desire these type of things, and they mean a lot more, I think, to you as you get older and you understand and respect and just have a different level of maturity and understanding about life. And so, these words, they're just, they're just packed full of wisdom. And if we can take that wisdom and translate it into action in our own life, I really do think that we can experience those blessings that are promised. And this week in chapter 25, we are switching from the writings of the sages, which were the last few chapters there, back into the writings of Solomon. And after reading chapter 25, the word that I walked away really thinking about is trustworthy. And that's kind of, I guess, in my mind, what summed up this chapter for me, the word trustworthy. And it's very interesting to me where we are today in relationship to where we have come. And when we think about this idea of trust and trustworthiness, it wasn't too awful long ago. It's not like it was in the distant past. I mean, it was a time that I can clearly remember, even at 47 years old, that it was a pillar of society. This trustworthiness, and at that time, society looked a lot different, and the way that it operated was a lot different. And I think that this attests to the fact that back then there was more of this trustworthiness than what we see in modern society. And it's a shame because when you go back there, you see a time when, a man's word meant everything, and it was not taken lightly. And, a few chapters back, the word of the week was reputation, and the importance of reputation, and how that reputation is, built through good character. And these things seem to mean a lot more back then, because all of these type of character traits are what ultimately would determine if you are a person that was trustworthy. And that trustworthiness meant everything back then. Where today, I feel like, we have definitely veered off the path, and that's just not something that we focus a lot on today. But the fact of the matter is, it was then, and it still is today, and I believe always will be, a pillar of a healthy society. And, back then, deals were made solely on the word of a man, the agreement. The word alone was enough. A handshake meant a lot back then. I mean, if the word and the agreement of a word wasn't enough, then the handshake was the only thing left to seal the deal. And then at some point, I'm not sure what led to it, but it seems as though there was a shift where we started to shift away from that, to where then a signature was required, and you had to sign your name to a deal, or things like this. And now where we are today, it's evolved so much from that, the simplicity of a man's word and a handshake, to now signing your life away, to enter into an agreement or make a deal with somebody regarding, just about anything these days. And that's because, as a whole, for whatever reason, however it happened, we have lost this pillar of trustworthiness in society. And, there are many cultural shifts over time, and it looks a lot different today than it did back then. But I mean, these core pillars that are the foundation of a healthy society that's operating at its fullest potential. Well, these pillars, they don't change. And when you take one of them away, well, the whole society can begin to collapse. And I think that that's what we see today, because there is a lack of trust in just about every area today, I think. I mean, before, you would turn on the news and you had this confidence that this is the authority, this is the voice where I can obtain truth about current events and things that are happening in the world. And so these were the authoritative voices of the time, and people trusted them, in terms of like the mainstream media, for instance. But all that has changed. And that's because they have changed. And over time, they have been caught being not so trustworthy. And when you do this repeatedly over time, well, then you lose that trust. And once you've lost that trust, it is very, very difficult to gain it back. And that's where I feel like we are sitting today. We are at a time where everything that we see unfolding in society today, these things are all related to this lack of trust. We don't have trust in our government anymore. We've lost the trust in the leadership of the country, and we've lost trust in our neighbors, and we've lost trust in the institutions, and we've lost trust in the establishments. And that's because we have set up these empires of control above us. And in so doing, it creates this hierarchy for negative influence to creep in. And then once it does and it starts to decay at that trust, everything just begins to fall apart. And I really think that that's where we're at today. And that's why, the alternative media, places such as YouTube and other social media sites, they have taken on the role that the mainstream used to play, because people have lost trust in those media outlets, and now they're looking to other alternative sources for that truth. And so truth in itself is the pillar. I mean, to me, it is the most important thing of all. I mean, without truth, nothing stands. And when we're talking about truth and trust, these things are very closely related, because it takes a man of integrity, a person of truth, to even be considered as someone that is trustworthy. And so these two things are interconnected and intimately connected, and they cannot be taken apart. You can't remove them from each other. And we are just seeing the absolute degradation of truth. And because of this, there is an all-time high in the lack of trust in all of these systems that are operating around us. And rightfully so, because, over time, I feel like they've been caught over and over again not being sources of truth. And when you do this repeatedly and it becomes who you are, what you're known for, well, then you've lost all credibility. And when you lose that credibility, sometimes you never get it back. And usually in these cases, when we're talking about, institutions and establishments and government, I'm not sure you ever do get it back once you've lost that. And I feel like that's where we're at today. I mean, it's always, there are so many things going on in the world. When we talk about the thing that's going on in Iran, I mean, one day we're in a peace deal and, there's a ceasefire and we're in the middle of a peace deal and we're at the brink of ending this thing. And then, boop, just, next day, that's all off the table. We're back at war. And it's just, this has been going on for a very long time now. And people are growing weary of these voices that are telling us these things. And once you become impacted by these things, like most of Americans are now, I mean, through, higher prices in just about every area. I mean, we are all experiencing the strain from the things that are going on in the world. And when people are looking to these sources to try and understand what it is that's going on and trying to wrap their head around what's happening and where they may stand in all of it, when you struggle to find an outlet to obtain truth, well, I would say at that point your society is crumbling. And I know as Americans, we think so highly of our country and that we're just completely unbreakable and unstoppable and all of these things. But we have to remember that every great society, every great empire, all the most powerful empires in our history have all fallen. And when they do, I think that this is what it looks like in the beginning stages, when trust has eroded away from the things out there that are ultimately the decision makers and the things that are impacting the average man and woman, these things, the average family. When these things begin to happen, I think that what we are experiencing is the decline of the world power that still is, but could very soon become the was of the American empire. And that's a shame. Because to be a citizen of the United States, to be an American, I think that around the world at one point, we were held in a high regard in return in terms of trust and truth and trustworthiness. But I think that has changed and that has shifted, and we don't carry that same good name that we used to carry around the world and on the world stage. And that's a shame, because it's not that this country isn't made up of good, trustworthy people. It's just that the people who represent us at the top are not showing signs of virtue themselves. And when that is your leadership, these are the type of things that are bound to happen. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't want to harp on it too much, but I think that it's becoming clearly evident the role that truth plays, the role that trust plays, and I think that it's becoming clearer and clearer by the day that there is a lack of trust in the leadership and in the things that are happening around us. And when this begins to happen, it's quite possibly the beginning of the end, and I don't say that lightly, but that's my opinion and that's how I feel about it. But back to the word trustworthiness. On an individual level, this is where it all starts. And this is how this great country was built at one time and held that reputation, that good reputation, and it was held in high regard because of individuals. And then when, the majority of your population are trustworthy people, well, then that's going to result in a trustworthy society and a society that's built upon truth. And that is a sturdy foundation for any society. But when you lose that, things begin to fall. And I wanted to take a look at the etymology of the word trustworthy and even dive into the Hebrew a little bit, because I think it's pretty interesting how these things tie in. We live in a culture that's obsessed with freedom and progress and personal success. And we've built these massive digital networks and complex economies and endless systems to keep ourselves connected. But beneath all that noise, there is a quiet structural rotting that's taking place. And if you look at the architecture of human history, society doesn't usually collapse from an external enemy. It collapses from internal structure failure. And the ultimate load bearing pillar of any society, any civilization, any family, any relationship is trustworthiness. And when you open the book of Proverbs, specifically to chapter 25, you realize that God doesn't view trust as just a mere social courtesy. He views it as a matter of cultural survival. Because when trustworthiness and truth breaks down, the world around it begins to crumble into chaos. And I think that's what we're seeing. So to understand why this pillar matters so much, we have to look at what the word trust actually means. And if you trace it back in the English to its ancient linguistic roots, it's pretty profound, because it comes from the Proto-Indo-European word daru. And it's interesting because there's another word that comes from that exact root, daru, and that word is tree. And so to the ancient mind, trust wasn't a vague, floating emotional feeling. It was a physical feeling. It was something tangible. To be trustworthy meant to be firm and deeply rooted and unyielding as a oak tree, and something that you could lean your full weight against without fear of it snapping. It was able to bear the weight of these things. And similarly, the word true originally meant like straight or aligned. Like if that board is true, well, then it's a straight board. And like a straight piece of timber used by a carpenter or whatever to hold up a roof, when you are trustworthy, you are structurally sound. It's just very interesting to understand how these words all tie in together. And I think it gives us a little bit deeper insight into, what we can take from this. In Hebrew, the concept of truth is the word emet, and trustworthiness is emunah. And so both of these words come from the root verb aman, which means to support or confirm or uphold. And it's where we get our word amen. And in ancient Israel, a master builder or skilled artisan was called an amon. And this was because when they built a pillar, it stayed upright. It didn't buckle when it was under pressure. And for the Hebrews, truth wasn't just a correct intellectual statement, it was a structural reality. And if a stone step was solid and wouldn't cause you to slip, well, then that step was considered true. And there's a brilliant visual lesson hidden in how emet is spelled in Hebrew. And it uses 3 letters. And these letters are the aleph, which is the first letter in the alphabet, mem, which is the exact middle letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and then tav, which is the very last letter. And truth spans the entire alphabet. It is complete. It is the beginning, the middle, and the end. If you were to remove the first letter, the aleph, which represents Yahweh, the ultimate source of truth, what you are left with are only 2 letters, the mem and tav. And that spells the Hebrew word met, which means dead. And so, I mean, you can see how all of this works together here. And when a society removes God from the equation and decides that truth is negotiable, trustworthiness dies. And when trust dies, society becomes entirely defenseless. All right, let's dive in chapter 25 here. This is the second collection attributed to Solomon. And the following are also Proverbs of Solomon, transcribed by Hezekiah, king of Judah. To conceal a matter, this is the glory of God. To sift it thoroughly, the glory of kings. High though the heavens are, deep the earth, there is no fathoming the heart of kings. From silver remove the dross, and it emerges wholly purified. From the king's presence remove the wicked, and on virtue his throne is founded. In the presence of the king, do not give yourself airs. Do not put yourself where the great are standing. Better to be invited, come up here, than to be humiliated in the presence of the prince. What your eyes have witnessed, do not come out with it too quickly at trial. For what are you to do at the end, should your neighbor confute you? Have the quarrel out with your neighbor, but do not disclose another's secret, or someone hearing will reproach you with it, and so you lose your reputation. Like apples of gold in a silver setting is a word that is aptly spoken. A golden ring, an ornament of finest gold, is a wise rebuke to an attentive ear. The coolness of snow in harvest time, such is the trusty messenger to those who send him. He revives the soul of his master. Clouds and gusts and yet no rain, such is the man who promises are princely but never kept. With patience a judge may be cajoled, a soft tongue breaks bones. Eat to your satisfaction what honey you may find, but do not excess, or you will bring it up again. Do not set foot too often in your neighbor's house, for fear he tires of you and comes to hate you. A mace, a sword, a keen arrow, such is the man who bears false witness against his neighbor. Decaying tooth, lame foot, such is the fickle man when trusted in the time of trouble. As well, take off your coat in bitter winter. It is to treat a wound with vinegar, to sing songs to a sorrow heart. If your enemy is hungry, give him something to eat. If thirsty, something to drink. By this you heap red-hot coals on his head, and Yahweh will repay you. The rain is born on the north wind, the ravaged face of a backbiting tongue. Better the corner of a loft to live in than a house shared with a scolding woman. Cold water to a thirsty throat, such is good news from a distant land. A churned up spring, a fountain fouled, such is the virtuous man trembling before the wicked. It is not good to eat too much honey, or to be taken in by fawning words. An open town and without defenses, such is the man lacking self-control. And so, yeah, that's what I pulled from it. Trustworthy. And it's interesting because when we think about relationships, if you think about our relationship with the Heavenly Father, that relationship is a relationship that is built upon trust because it's built upon faith. And to have faith in itself is to trust in something. And so you cannot have faith without first trusting in it. And so this is the ultimate display of this trustworthiness, this relationship with the Most High, because in it, through our faith, we are trusting in the words that He's given us and the promises that He's made. And just like that relationship with Yahweh is a relationship that's built upon trust in trusting in him and trusting in the things that he has said and the direction and the instructions that he's given us. Well, in the same way, in our earthly relationships, those relationships are also built upon trust. And to have solid, healthy relationships with people around you, those relationships must be built upon trust. And it is in this way that this makes up, one of the pillars of life, this trust, because trust is anchored to truth, and truth is the center pillar. And without truth, there is no trust. And without trust, what do you actually have? And so it's of utmost importance, this trustworthiness. And that's something I think most people, anyway, desire to be known for. A person that's trustworthy, a person that people can count on. And I mean, if we just look at the two words that make up this word, trust and worthy, well, are you worthy of someone's trust? If the answer to that is no, well, then I think that we should try and do everything that's in our power to try and build up that trust so that then we can be worthy of it. And so, very important things in terms of our relationships here and our relationship with our Creator. And, I am very familiar with people that I swear these people lie so much that they've even fooled themselves. I mean, I literally know people that lie so much that they believe it themselves. And I would say that's a bad spot to be. That's a bad spot to be. If you lie so much that you're confused in what's true and what's false, I think that perhaps you need a recalibration. And you need to get back to that guiding central pillar that is truth. Because if we don't have that trustworthiness to offer to those around us, what is it that we have then? Yahweh is the ultimate Amon. He is the rock that never shifts. And, just as a little personal challenge this week, as we try to keep this word trustworthy in the forefront of our minds, we need to stay grounded in the fact that this always begins at the individual level. And when at the individual level there is a collapse in these pillars, that's when on a societal level we start to see things break down the way that we see them today. And so this all begins and it all starts at the individual level. And so the challenge this week that I'd like to leave you with is, are you a deeply rooted tree, or are you not that thing that people can trust to put their weight on, And are you tearing down the walls of, your family and your community through compromise, or are you reinforcing them through radical, quiet integrity? Don't wait for the culture to become trustworthy. The rebuilding of the walls starts with each one of us. And if we want to see it change on that level, it has to begin here. And so, yeah, just a very, very important word. And, the way these words tie into each other from week to week, it's remarkable. And I can see this blueprint that's designed through this journey through Proverbs. And in my opinion, it's like an architectural blueprint to a virtuous life. And if that's something that you desire as well then please join us on this journey as we continue to work ourselves through the book of Proverbs, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. And until next week, Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern, I am Brad Casper. This is Proving Proverbs. Hope to see you there. We're out.